Two lambs found alone after storm finally get a second chance. The rain had been falling for days. The fields were soaked, the ground muddy, and the weather felt endless. Out in the middle of it all were two tiny lambs. They were running in circles, bleating nonstop, desperate to find their mother. It was clear they were lost and scared, and no one was coming to help them. At first, there was hope their mother might return. They were watched carefully through the day, each little cry echoing across the wet fields. But as the hours passed, it became obvious she wasn't coming back. The lambs were weak, soaked to the bone, and on the edge of collapse. Without help, they wouldn't survive another night. That's when the decision was made to step in. They were gently scooped up, carried away from the cold ground, and taken to safety. Their tiny bodies trembled, and their cries were thin and tired. They were desperate for warmth, desperate for food, desperate for someone to step into the role of their missing mother. The first bottle of warm milk changed everything. As soon as the lambs tasted it, they latched on with all the strength they had left. Their tails wiggled furiously, and for the first time, a spark of life returned to their eyes. From that moment on, they seemed to decide, "You're our mother now." The next morning brought another sign of hope. Instead of weak cries, there were soft, cheerful bleats. The lambs followed close behind, sticking like glue, as if afraid to lose sight of the only safety they now knew. Their little heads pushed against legs, their eyes full of trust. Even after such a rough start, they were ready to give all their love to the person who saved them. Those first few days were critical. Lambs that go through such a hard beginning often struggle with their immune systems. They can suddenly fall ill if not watched carefully. Every hour counted, making sure they stayed warm, making sure they got enough milk, making sure they felt safe. Thankfully, these two were fighters. With every feeding, their strength returned. With every nap on soft blankets, their tiny bodies healed. Before long, they were running around like happy little campers, bouncing, playing, and exploring everything around them. That's when their cheeky personalities started to shine. They quickly memorized their feeding schedule, and if the milk came late, even by 5 minutes, they made sure to let everyone know. Their little bleats grew louder, their stomping feet quicker, and they would practically chase down the door demanding their bottles. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving. The lambs became the bosses of the house. Feeding time was no longer calm. It was chaos mixed with joy, and it was impossible not to smile at the sight of them. One of the most joyful things about lambs is how playful they are. They don't just run, they zoom. They jump. They bounce off anything they can find. Chairs, logs, or even just each other. It all became part of their games. They invented silly competitions like who could jump the highest or who could balance the longest on a little ledge. Their energy was endless, and every moment with them brightened the day. Even with all their mischief, the bond they formed was unshakable. After losing their mother so young, they clung to each other and to the people who cared for them. Wherever their caregiver went, the lambs followed. If one strayed too far, the other would call out, and they'd rush back together. That instinct to stay close never faded. Over time, the weather improved. The fields dried, the skies cleared, and life settled into a routine. The lambs grew stronger, their legs steady, their coats fluffier. They no longer looked like weak little babies. They looked like confident young lambs who knew they were loved and safe. They still had their funny quirks. They'd zoom across the yard for no reason at all. They'd try to squeeze into spaces far too small for them. And when bedtime came, they'd curl up together, still side by side, just like the day they were found. Raising orphan lambs isn't always easy. It takes time, patience, and a lot of milk. But the reward is in moments like these. The wag of a little tail during feeding, the bounce of joy when they see you, the soft bleat calling out just to know you're nearby. These lambs weren't just surviving a storm anymore. They were living a happy, playful, and safe life. Their story reminds us of something simple, but powerful. Even when life begins with hardship, kindness can rewrite the ending. Two lambs, once abandoned in the rain, found a family and a future because someone cared enough to stop and help. If this story of the lambs made you smile, please give it a like. Share it with friends so more people can see the power of rescue. And if you've ever saved or cared for an animal in need, tell us your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Even sharing helps more animals find love and safety.